Good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, the 12th of April, and I welcome you all to the Vetiva breakfast meeting. The meeting is brought to you by Vetiva Capital Management in partnership with Frontier Africa Report. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded and may be shared with third parties, as well as being broadcast live on Facebook. The presentation is scheduled to hold for 30 minutes, inclusive of Q&A. However, if due to time constraints we are unable to answer all of your questions, kindly forward them to research@vetiva.com. Today we'll be hearing from our equity and fixed income traders and from our partners at Frontier Africa Reports. First, we'll start with Sean, our equity trader. Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Sean.
Oh, good morning, Joshua. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Uh, All right, great. Good morning and good morning, everyone. We start with the rundown of some markets in the West African region, and we start off from Ghana, which recorded a significant daily index movement on the back of a 4.49% appreciation in the share price of MTN Ghana. The counter continues to lead activity level in that market. We saw the 2.09% close in the market pushed the main composite index to a 1-week gain of 3.98% and a year-to-date gain of 18.53% in that market. We expect the um, GSC composite index to continue on a bullish note, while profit taking cannot be overruled anyway going into this new week. In the BRVM, we saw a different outcome from the market in Ghana, in Accra, as the index dropped marginally by 1 basis point. Um, However, the market recorded a weekly gain of 41 bips and a year-to-date loss of 2.44% in that market. Volume and value improved in this session as well. We'll continue to expect a mixed market going into the week, with marginal gains and losses in that market. Then moving to the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the Osher Index the last week trading session of the previous week ended in green, with the index closing 17 bips higher to consolidate gains recorded in prior session. The banking sector to continued resurgence as the subsector closed higher, 41 bips for consecutive days of gains, as well as 117 bips in the gain 117 bips gain in the share price of MTN Nigeria to support the market positive close on Friday. Guinness sustained the correction seen in the name, as the counter lost 10% on the day, as well as Oando and Etana Oil. These losses were not sufficient to prevent the upward market close in that session. Anyway, then activity level was significantly lower, with value traded declining by about 19%, as we experienced a very tepid market with investors staying cautious, just like we mentioned on on Thursday about the market on Thursday. Activity level continues to decline, as well as investors just staying cautious and watching. The banking subsector continues to dominate with about 60% of market activity. That was what we saw in the market on Friday. For sectoral performances, we saw mixed subsector performance, with the banking sector, as mentioned earlier, leading the gainers pack with 41 basis points. We saw the likes of GTB, Zenith Bank, and FBN all closing higher on the back of cherry picking. But like I mentioned earlier, though they were on thin volumes, while the insurance subsector also closed higher in that sector, in that in the market on that day. Losses in we saw losses in Guinness, Orlando, and Itana, all dragging the consumer goods as well as the oil and gas subsector down. Guinness continued on that correction um, that we have seen on the name. So going into today, as market and investors alike continue to look out for catalysts to sway the sentiment to a strong buy, we expect the week to start on a quiet note with pockets of cherry picking, though, while crosses in we still expect crosses in mid to large cap names um, to to be in the market. A few of them will likely see maybe Zenith, GTB, MTN. We'll likely see some crosses in those names to sustain the market. Also, with most companies in their close period, in anticipation for Q1 2021 results, investors will also wait for these results to indicate market direction. For the ones that are for the ones that probably outperform, we will see investors begin to cherry pick. Anyway, we expect the result to start trickling in between the end of this week and next week. We believe savvy investors should start taking position based on fundamentals and before these results are fully released into the market, so they can gain some level of exposure to the names before everyone starts rushing into it. So we believe that that will be the theme for the week. Everyone looking out for these results for whichever one comes in, and investors are advised to just take positions in fundamentally sound names so that at least you have some level of exposure before other people comes in. Thank you very much. That will be it for the equities market.
Thank you very much, Sean. Nice to be hearing from Omeregi, our fixed income trader. Good morning, Omeregi.
Good morning, Joshua. Good morning, everybody. I'll start with the money market. The money market opened 45 billion short on Friday, coming from 56.95 billion that was recorded on Thursday. This negative opening figure was on the back of SLF figures of about 159 billion. So the high SLF figures recorded reflect the liquidity strain in the market as banks had to turn to the CBN discount window for funding for better part of last week. So consequently, rates closed the week at around 13%. So our expectation for today is that money market will trade at similar levels, barring any major shock to the system. Moving on to the to the FS market, the parallel market closed last week on a stable note as rate traded at 485 naira to a dollar, while a new window traded at a high of 420 naira to a dollar, closing at 409 naira to a dollar. So industry and e-turnover decreased significantly to $55.21 million on Friday, coming from $93.69 million that was recorded on Thursday. We expect the Naira to continue to trade at these levels in the absence of any major funding to the FS market. So moving on to the T-bills market, the T-bills market closed last week on a relatively active note. We saw some players who got prorated volumes at the OMO auction try to feed their own feed demand in the secondary market. Their demand was largely skewed to the long-dated OMO papers, but offers on that end were largely on March 8th and March 15th OMO papers, but few trades were consummated because of the disparity between the bid and ask. So players rather just hold on to their OMO papers at 10.10 levels than sell at 8% levels. And if they are to sell, they prefer to sell at 7% levels. The NTB space closed the week with a lot of offers seen across the benchmark curve And as the story has been for the past couple of days, bids on that space remain very scarce. So our expectation is that the NTB market will trade on a very bearish note this week as players try to offload their current positions with the anticipation of getting higher rates at the NTB auction later this week. Moving on to the bonds market. The bonds market closed last week with a slowdown to the bearish momentum that has characterized the bonds market throughout last week. We saw demand intensify for the mid to long end of the benchmark curve, particularly on the 2027, 2036, and the 2045 maturities. This slowdown in the bearish momentum was largely driven by players trying to take advantage of the high rates. So on an average, marginal rates closed lower compared to what we saw on Thursday. So our expectation for today is that the bonds market will trade on a mixed sentiment as players await the results from the NTB auction for guidance on the direction of short-term interest rates. That'll be all for fixed income. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Omar. Now we'll hear from Temple Ashaji, our partner at Frontier Africa Report. Good morning, Temple.
Good morning, Joshua. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a beautiful new week. And taking off as usual from the eastern part of Africa, the PMI numbers for that country came in recently over the weekend, and business activity shrunk sharply to 50.6 reading for the month of March, all the way from 50.9, but it remains around the threshold of 50 reading. Contraction, we understand, is due to the outputs and new orders slowing for that period. Everyone recall that for this time, for the past 2 or 3 weeks now, we've had Kenya on lockdown again due to the third wave of coronavirus in that country. You recall again that Tanzania, which is a country that has continued to live in denial of COVID-19, has a stronger border with Kenya, and that is how the effect of COVID-19 has been poorly managed in that region, which is fueling the rise in Kenya, specifically at the moment. The country also expects its budget deficit to contract to like 7.5% of GDP come 2021-2022 calendar year or fiscal year, because again, in recent time, the Parliament's Budget Appropriation Committee has been heaping them some warning, asking them to ensure that that does not exceed the current level as it is right now. So they do expect that, of course, during the week, over the weekend, the Ministry of Finance corroborated what the Parliament has said, and they said that they are sure that it won't exceed that. This is all put together ahead of the annual budget speech that is expected sometimes in June. That's in 2 months' time. Finally, for that region is that Bank of Tanzania sees economy growing at 5.7% in 2021 on global trade and, of course, investment. You'll also recall again that the country has just got the former vice president becoming the president, and of course the former minister of finance, a very proactive gentleman there, is now the vice president, and they do expect that they will be able to bring about some level of turnaround in that economy. For the western part of Africa, you've got the NIPC in Nigeria. That's the NIPC in Nigeria, Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission, launching a compendium of states' investment opportunities today, something that investors will be happy to have. Niger borrowed some 33 billion CFA franc from the UEMOA markets, through UEMOA being the West African Economic and Monetary Union recently, something to also help them boost the economic performance. The Securities and Exchange Commission in Ghana has also just drafted new guidelines to check investments appropriations. And we hope that that will guide investors in that space or in that country. The Southern African market has got the SA Reserves bank chief, that's more like the central bank governor there, completing his 3-year term as the IMFC. IMFC is the International Monetary and Financial Committee of the IMF. And that is like a major advisory board for that that for the fund. We're talking about Lesaja Kenyago. That's the president, the central bank governor in South Africa. You've got Namibia's private sector credits rising by less than 1%, but that's something that sounds like a good step in the right direction. It's up to 105 billion Namibian dollars. That's for the month of February. In Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe's Tobacco Industry and Marketing Board is expecting the output growth for tobacco to rise by around 9% to 200,000 tons in 2021. As of last year, they had recorded 184,000 tons, and they do expect that with the improvements in rainfall that they've been having in recent times, there will be more demand for tobacco. However, we know that smokers are liable to die young. Northern part of Africa's got Egypt's annual inflation inching up for the month of March to 4.8%. And of course, core inflation is higher at 3.7% for the same period. The National Bank of Greece is planning to exit Egyptian market. They've written a letter to the Central Bank of Egypt to exit because, of course, in recent time, they've tried to expand their operations beyond having just 17 branches in that climb, but it's been all unsuccessful, and so they're now looking to withdraw from Egypt in line with the bank's restructuring agreements that they signed with the European Commission in recent time. Thank you for listening to our headlines this morning. Have a lovely day.
Thank you very much for that, Temple. We have now reached the Q&A segment. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand if you prefer to speak, or you can leave a comment in the chat box or on the Q&A box. I see somebody has asked the question of where they can get the recording. You can be sent the recording of these meetings if you send an email request to sales@vetiva.com. And if you're joining us on Facebook, you can also leave a comment and we will answer your question. It appears we have no questions today, which means we have reached the end of the meeting. Thank you for joining us. Hope that you join us again tomorrow. We hope that you have a good day. Thank you.